Oh, good evening. Sorry I didn't see y'all there. Things sure have gotten easier now that we have enclosed gears on our tractors. Papa says it sure is a blessing he had me on the farm, so he'd have someone to help with the machinery. Says it's all too newfangled for him, but that I've got a real knack for it. In fact, knowing how to work on these is what kept me from having to go overseas and fight in the trenches like so many of my friends did. I kind of like the idea of getting to help our airmen up in the sky, so far away from the fields here in Putnam County. I always figured I'd take over the farm. But because of what was happening over in Europe and, well, the Germans, they had a different plan for my life. Oh, but wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you more about how all that happened. First, let me introduce myself. Name is Sergeant First Class Aubrey C. Wright, from right here in Cookeville, Tennessee. I was born in 1895, the only son of John and Jenny Wright. I grew up on the farm with Papa and Mama and my sisters Alva and Dee. Papa said he was glad he had him a son to help in the fields and two very fine daughters to help Mama with things around the house. When I was a young boy, I was just fascinated with machines, and as I grew up, I watched while we unhitched the horses and replaced our plow with this amazing new tractor. I remember the day it was delivered, and I stayed out in the barn all night studying all those gears and pistons and moving parts. I was amazed at how they all worked together to help toil the fields, to make them fallow and come back through at harvest time and pull the crops. It sure made it easier to plant and grow more, and we loaded these freight trains right over here just full of corn and soybeans, and they were headed off to the market in the big city. Papa said, watch, I'd see how these railroads changed in just a few years, and he was right. These same rails that used to bring people to town and send our crops off to the city soon would be full instead of soldiers just coming through. But Papa, he said I had a higher, more divine purpose, and after much discussion and prayer around our supper table, Mama finally agreed to let me enlist in the United States Army. Papa assured her that, smart as I was, they could use me for more than just fighting in the trenches, and sure enough, after I took my aptitude test, they started training me to work on the most exciting thing there is in the Army, airplanes. But even peril I never saw coming still existed there. Granted, it was nothing like what I'd heard tell from some of my friends, the ones who were lucky enough to come back from over there. They told me stories you wouldn't believe. Stories of German U-boats trolling the waters, looking to torpedo ships full of soldiers going across the ocean. Once they got over to these places they'd only seen in books and heard of in the papers. Sophisticated weapons like bolt-action rifles and artillery like explosive shells and mortars, well, they all ensured that danger and death lurked beyond every hill and in every valley. Our young boys, who were stirred by a love of country and a sense of duty, who just months ago were on the farm, they were shredded into pieces, ripped apart, their eyes wide in fear with shock. Hearts just stopped beating and they fell dead by the hundreds and thousands in places they couldn't even pronounce. One doughboy, that's what they called us soldiers in the Great War, was doughboys, he told me, you know what scared me more than the sound of rifle fire? A sneeze. You see, in 1918, what they called the Spanish flu come through. People would take sick and sometimes be dead before the next sunrise. Terror just swept through everywhere. Doctors, nurses, even the mail carrier wore a mask and wouldn't stop to speak for fear of coming down with influenza. Before it was over, Papa said he saw in the paper somewhere between 50 to 100 million people died across the world. It came and went quicker than a shell blasting out of a howitzer. Did you know that more of our boys died from influenza and pneumonia during the Great War than from battle? In fact, that's how my friend Gilbert McGee, he lies right over there, that's how he died. He was over in France fighting the army of the Central Powers and was quarantined like thousands of other sick boys were, and he died in the fall of 1918. His mother told my mama that she sure was glad that they at least brought him back over here to take his rest. She said that gave her some peace, like he just took sick and went to sleep to the sound of her lullaby, cradled in her arms. And over here is my friend Max Hale. We like to call him Max Morgan. Well, he was a sailor on the USS Solace. We never did know whether he took sick or he took a bullet, but it was somewhere across the deep blue sea, and it's nice to have him here with us too. You see, we'd never seen anything like it. Papa said his granddaddy told him about the conflict between the states years ago, and we'd never seen the world so uncertain and death so readily available in any years since, when the world just seemed to crack and slip into chaos around us beneath the very ground and fields that we worked on, walked on, and lived on. A letter I received from a friend contained the following. He said, "One man has both legs gone. He lay in a shell hole 6 days. There was nothing to eat, but the hole was filled with water, and in that water lay the decaying body of his best friend, and he had to drink from that water to keep alive." Pleasant, isn't it? Such wrecks as many of these men are, and such faces. Well, I thought I'd got lucky because I was shipped off to Langley Field, Virginia. My job was as an airplane mechanic, and as I wrote much to the comfort of Mama and Papa, just took me to the edge of the ocean, but never had to cross it and out into that hell of war. But Flanders Fields wasn't the only place boys like me were taken up to meet our Maker. It was a particularly cold morning, the last day of April 1919. I had just finished tightening up the gears inside the plane engine and taking it through all of her routine checks. I always gave the signal for when the pilot was supposed to start the engine, but that day something went wrong and we didn't communicate, and well, I don't remember exactly what happened. All I remember is thinking that this is what the crush of a mortar shell must feel like. I felt a rushing and violent explosion of pain. I heard a wild bang like it was coming from inside my head, or at least what was left of it. You see, the pilot started the plane while I was still standing underneath it, and that giant blade slammed hard against the side of my head, so strong it broke the propeller blade, and it tossed me far, limp and lifeless, onto the tarmac. They rushed me off to the hospital, but there was not anything they could do for me, and so that's where my story ends. And I'm so glad y'all let me share it with you and let me live again tonight. But don't feel bad for me. I was only one out of 116,516 young American men who laid down our lives for this great country. And in addition to Gilbert, Max Morgan, more than 20 other Putnam County boys made the ultimate sacrifice in that war. So let's pause to remember them now. And thanks for stopping by. God bless you, and God bless America. And now, I better get back to work on this engine.